The presidents of the United States and China had a conversation this morning. Now, here's something I did not know until I was older, that if you want to know what time it is in China, just swap East Coast American time, PM for AM. Now, I don't know if daylight time really affects this or not, but for example, right now as I'm reading this, it is 1:35 p.m. here on the East Coast of the United States, which means it's 1:35 a.m. in Beijing. Pretty easy, huh? So this morning, between 7 and 8 a.m., which would have been 7 and 8 p.m. China, more or less, and again, it might be affected by daylight savings time. I can't remember. The president and the presidents of China and the United States spoke. They wanted to talk about a trade deal. Michael Sobolik is a senior fellow at the Hudson Institute, and he's got a great tweet up about this call. By the way, we set the parameters, as I mentioned earlier. We know about the phone call first because the Chinese said so before the Americans. The Americans had not said anything. The White House had said nothing. And the Chinese government released a statement basically saying Xi Jinping humbled himself to take a phone call from the president of the United States. Did not have to, but he graciously did. In other words, they're trying to imply that Donald Trump cold called the Chinese president and he picked up the phone even though he didn't have to. Chinese spin. Michael Sobolik's tweet. On the Trump-Xi call, Trump is focused on winning a trade war, which is important, but winning the Cold War with the CCP is what really matters. If Trump makes this about a trade deal, Xi will just violate it down the road. The president needs a plan to eliminate all critical supply chains from China exposure, especially with rare earth minerals, and then start executing competitive actions. Take TikTok offline and don't reverse it. Implement restrictions on Chinese student visas and don't reverse them. These policies aren't bargaining chips. They're steps to take our own national security seriously. I have a question. Are we in a trade war with China or a Cold War with China? Because a trade war can be layered into a Cold War, but a Cold War cannot be layered into a trade war. What's the precipitating event, Cold War or trade war? You got to answer that question right. And the answer, by the way, is Cold War. There can be a trade war within a Cold War. There can't be a Cold War within a trade war. There can't be a Cold War within a trade war because the actions on this and strategies related to one can't relate to the other. With a Cold War and a trade war within a Cold War, our actions within a Cold War can translate into a trade war. We've got to decide trade war or Cold War. And the answer is Cold War, so we should be behaving accordingly. And that does mean tariffs can't be it. Now, if you're a longtime listener to your program, you know I oppose tariffs, but I support them on China. Strategic tariffs, not a bad thing. Global tariffs, not a good thing. Strategic tariffs on China, a very good thing, but they can't be the only thing because this isn't a trade war. It's a Cold War. The American Congress passed a law saying the Chinese government must divest itself from TikTok, and the Supreme Court agreed. Contrary to the law, the President of the United States continues to extend out the divestment order so that China doesn't have to give up TikTok. TikTok is a massive surveillance app on the United States. Interestingly enough, I finally, because I thought China was close to divesting itself from TikTok, I decided to set up an account. I regularly post to TikTok as E.W. Erickson, anti-Chinese Communist Party materials, and you would be probably not surprised to learn how hostile and angry commenters get when you criticize the Chinese Communist Party on TikTok. They come out of the woodworks. We're not in a trade war with China, although that's part of it. We're in a Cold War with China. It's not a trade war that had two Chinese postgraduate students come into Detroit carrying a dangerous fungus that could wipe out American crops. That's not a trade war. That's Cold War stuff. China spread COVID around the world. China now wants to drop a fungus into the United States that wipes out corn and wheat and rice. China has hacked into our infrastructure so deeply we don't know how to get them out. I have talked with Senator Tom Cotton before. He's the chairman of the Intelligence Committee, and he can't tell me the extent of the infestation, but doesn't sound very reassured that we can fix it. I've talked to a member of the Trump administration off the record. Well, I should say on background because I'm allowed to talk about it, but I can't tell you who I talked to. They don't want attribution for this. I talked to a member of the Trump administration, and they said they've given up on trying to get the Chinese out of our telecom infrastructure. They don't know how to get them out. They're so far infested. What they're trying to do is build a new telecom infrastructure around the existing telecom infrastructure, one for secure use that the Chinese can't get into because they're so far into the existing telecom infrastructure, they don't know how to get them out of it. They've given up. AT&T, Verizon, the like, they don't know how to purge China. China is literally right now listening to every single bit of audio that comes across your phone. If you're streaming my program right now, the Chinese probably have me on a watch list. If you're talking to someone on the phone, China has a recording of it. If you're texting someone on your phone outside of WhatsApp or iMessages with blue chat bubbles, China's got a copy of it. China is building a massive intelligence database. Now listen, many of you are listening to me right now. You're saying, well, it doesn't matter to me. I got nothing to hide. Screw the Chinese. I get it. You have a 17-year-old in your house right now on summer vacation who, unbeknownst to you, at night is watching pornography on his cell phone. China knows. And your kid goes to college and gets a job out of college with a major company. And his porn habit has developed. And China, as your kid rises through the ranks, shows up one day in the future and says, hey, we're going to expose all of your deviancies. We've been watching you. We know about your porn habit. We know the deviant style you've been watching. You're either going to help us or we're going to destroy you. China's playing a much longer game. They don't care about you. They care about your kid who's online right now. And because they've infiltrated our telecom system the way they have, they know everything about what your kid is doing. China knows. China has gotten into our water systems and our power grid. Now, the great thing about the power grid is the way the power grid now works in this country is states are doing a very good job of being able to push the Chinese out. And the power grid, with the exception of Texas, the way it now transmits power back and forth across the country and across the Mississippi River from the East Coast to the West Coast and even into Texas, makes our power grid more stable than it used to be. And it's going to be harder for the Chinese to turn out the lights on us. They'll be able to turn your electricity off. They'll be able to turn your phones off. They'll be able to turn your telecom off. They'll even probably be able to impact your internet connection. And our water supply is in danger of the Chinese and the Russians. Are we in a trade war or a Cold War? We need to return the ability to make weapons to this country. We need to deal with the rare earth minerals. This is why the president, frankly, needs to side with Ukraine, because we signed a rare earth mineral deal with Ukraine, and the only way we're going to get access to those rare earth minerals is to side with Ukraine and help them beat the Russians, who, by the way, are working with the Chinese to beat the Ukrainians so that we can't take advantage of the rare earth mineral deal. Are we in a trade war or a Cold War? If we're in a Cold War, there are critical portions of our supply chain we've got to return home to be able to build missiles, to be able to build microchips. I agree with the president. We don't need to build T-shirts and socks here, but we sure as heck need to be able to build a guided missile in the United States. We need to be able to work with our allies to build ships quicker. The South Koreans, who are our great shipbuilding allies, can turn out something like 50 ships to every one American ship. And what this president and Congress have decided to do is engage in protectionism of the shipbuilding industry, which we all know as students of markets that protectionism actually builds up monopoly and slows things down. We've got to innovate. Are we in a Cold War or a trade war? We're in a Cold War with China. The Chinese don't mean to be a regional power. The Chinese don't want Taiwan and then they're going to say, well, we're done. They're going to look at Guam. They're going to look at the Northern Marianas Islands. They're going to look at the Marshall Islands. They're going to look at Hawaii. They're going to look at the world. The Chinese already have vessels around the world that are essentially vacuuming up the ocean, capturing as many fish as they can, so that the rest of the world is dependent on China for the food supply. You know, the Argentinians just sank a Chinese trawler. Many of the Chinese trawlers in the South Atlantic that are going where the Chinese aren't supposed to go, they have Chinese naval vessels within sight that are supposedly on ancillary, unrelated missions, but they're there to protect the Chinese vessels from getting shot like the Argentinians did. They're trying to capture the global supply of fish. They're trying to wipe out crops inside the United States. The Chinese mean to conquer us without a shot being fired, and we're still operating as if we're in a trade war with the Chinese, when in fact the Chinese are aiming to put in place the legwork so that if we go into a hot war, they can defeat us very quickly. By the way, as an aside, it's one reason I'm long-term bullish on over-the-air broadcast, TV and radio. Because the Chinese want to shut our internet down. And you know what's going to happen when our internet is shut down? The only thing you're going to be able to listen to and watch is your local TV station and your local radio station. Because your internet streaming services are going to be offline thanks to the Chinese. They have infested our infrastructure that bad. You're going to need your radio and TV at some point. You may think you can last on Spotify and podcast apps. You can't when the Chinese come calling. We've got to realize that the Chinese are actually a serious threat. They're not a trading partner. They're not a rival. They're an adversary, and they mean us harm. And if this administration continues to treat it as if it's just a trade war, they're going to get the better of us. We have an opportunity as a nation to stand up to China right now. Our economy is far stronger than them. We have far more leverage right now than the Chinese. We have an opportunity to take them on, but to take them on, we must realistically assess the fact that we're not in a trade war with China. We're in a Cold War with China, and the steps we take today matter long term, and we can begin to signal we're serious about taking on China by shutting down the surveillance app we all know as TikTok.